Okay, well, we will go ahead and get started here. And welcome to the January 2026 Kentucky Monthly Climate Perspective. And welcome again. Being the first of the year, not a whole lot going on in the ag area these days, so it's nice to see an audience. So welcome. And just to jump in here, as you know, this webinar series is presented by the Kentucky Climate Center at Western Kentucky University, in partnership with the National Integrated Drought Information System, NIDIS, and in coordination with the Midwest Drought Early Warning System. Production and delivery of this webinar reflects the contributions of many partners committed to serving the needs of the Commonwealth of Kentucky and its people. Our next regularly scheduled webinar will be back to our normal schedule, the first Thursday of each month, and the next one will be February 5th, 2026, at our normal time, 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing. The webinar is also live streaming on the Kentucky Climate Center YouTube channel. And a webinar archive is available on the Kentucky Climate Center YouTube channel. And I'm going to pause right here just to make sure this is recording. And it is recording now. So let me go ahead and pick back up here. All right. Well, we had a topsy-turvy month. I thought about putting a picture of a roller coaster in here for those of you who were in Kentucky through December. As you know, the first half of the month was quite a bit different from the second half, and we'll get into that as we go. Here are a few photos from a couple of Mesnet sites, one in Harlan County. After a freeze there, you can see the kind of the frost on the trees. And McLean County on December 9th. It looks like they missed the snow there, or if they had some, it melted off. But a nice, is that a sunrise or sunset? It looks like a sunset at that time. So we'll start off with looking at some recent conditions and then impacts, and then we'll look ahead at outlooks and then a summary at the end with questions and discussion. So this is just another photo from a Mesnet camera. Again, the first couple of weeks of December really felt like winter. It looked like winter across much of the state. This is Metcalfe County on December 12th. Nice, beautiful sunrise there. A little bit of snow, not too deep, but a beautiful picture. And then here's another one from Cumberland County again. A nice light snow covering there on the 12th, and within a few days that had melted off across much of the state, where we went into that warmer second half of the month. And let me go ahead and click a couple of folks in here. Right. Well, kicking off with temperatures, as we said, of course, it was 2 months combined into one. The first half was pretty cold, and the second half was pretty mild to warm across a lot of the state. You see these spatial plots here, and of course, the green is below average, and you can almost make out where the snow cover was between Louisville and Lexington, and to the east, and then the areas to the north of that had a nice snow cover, at least for a couple of weeks, and that's reflected in the December temperatures. Overall, we were 0.6 degrees below average for the month, so it was a cooler month, but that we were actually above the median. We were tied with 1915 for the 54th warmest December on record, but we were again 0.6 of a degree below the monthly average. If you look at the regions across the climate divisions across Kentucky, Climate Division 1 out west was right at average. Climate Division 2, 6 tenths below. The Eastern region, 3 tenths below, and then that Northern region, Climate Division 3, was 1.5 degrees below average. So definitely a lot colder where that snow cover stuck around. And looking at the year of 2025, we came out about a half degree above normal for the year. And for three of the four climate divisions, that was pretty consistent. 6/10 above across the west, 4/10 above across central and southern Kentucky, and 5/10 above for eastern Kentucky, and then close to average 0.1 degrees above across that third climate division three across that northern third of the state. That made 2025 tied for the 25th warmest on record out of the 131 years. And we're tied with 1913, 1954, and 2011. It didn't particularly feel like a warm year necessarily, but our summer was hot and humid, if you recall. And it turns out during 2025, we had four top 20 warm months and one top 20 cold month. If you remember, January was actually pretty cold. So January was the 20th coldest January on record. And March was the 15th warmest, April was the 16th warmest, June was the 14th warmest, and July was the 6th warmest. So we had a stretch in the spring and summer where we were pretty warm and largely driven by the nighttime lows. And then January being that top 20 coldest January on record. Now moving on to precipitation, these plots were done on Monday, so January 5th, but no rainfall. We've not seen any rainfall since then, so these still hold. The last really 10 days really haven't seen hardly any precip across the state. We're just contributing to the dryness that you'll see in the drought monitor. If we go back 2 weeks, again, just very little, less than a quarter inch across almost all the state. Very little over the last couple of weeks. If we go back a month, we see that portions of central Kentucky received over a couple of inches. Some areas closer to 3, but or at least closer to 2.5. But for the most part, areas east and west haven't seen much over an inch, if that. And so, as we'll see, a very dry December and a start to January. If we go back 2 months, we see again most of the state getting over 5 inches, except for that western third, still pretty dry. If we go back 90 days, we see a lot more uniform rainfall across the state, everyone having at least 6 inches, areas across central, eastern, 8 to 9, even 10 inches there in the south, very far southeast. But a pretty rather dry couple of months. If we look at December again, we see that statewide, 2 inches over central Kentucky, even less as you go areas to the west or northeast. And if you look at percentage of the normal, almost the entire state was below normal. And some areas received only, no, well, not even half of our normal precip during December. Which is in quite contrast to 2025. You see a pretty large area there across western central Kentucky that received over 60 inches. As you recall, our average rainfall across the state is closer to 50. And so the entire state received over 100% of their average normal, and most areas received close to 120% for their annual average. And if you kind of break last year up into 4-month blocks, that first, you may recall during January through April, we had flooding in February and flooding in April, which led to that very large swath across much of Kentucky. But we started to dry out some over the summer, May through August. May was wet, but then we started to dry out in July, and then especially in August. And so, taken as a whole, we were close to average across much of the state, some areas below, some areas above. But then it dried out in the fall. September through December was quite a bit drier, except for areas north of Lexington, east of Louisville. So in December, we averaged 2 1/4, just over 2 1/4 inches of rainfall across the state, which is only 51% of average. And if you break that down by the climate divisions, we had 3 inches below across western Kentucky, 2 inches, over 2 inches below across central, southern, and eastern Kentucky, and then just less than an inch and a half below across north central Kentucky, where they received a bit more snowfall. That makes December out to be the 16th driest December on record. Again, another top 20 record there. So the 16th driest on record out of the 131 years. Now, if we look at last year as a whole, we averaged 60 inches. We barely made it over that 60-inch threshold for the year, which puts us at 9 and 67 inches above the mean at 119% across the state. And again, breaking it down by climate division, the West was over 10 inches above, uh, and yeah, central, southern Kentucky over 12 inches, north central over 10 inches, and then eastern Kentucky just about 6.5 inches above normal. So eastern Kentucky didn't quite see the copious amounts that other areas did, but they were still quite a bit above average. And again, that makes 2025 out to be the sixth wettest year on record. The wettest being 2011, 2018, 1950, 1979, and 2019. You kind of see a pattern there. Three of the top five are since 2011, and now you add 2025 to that top 10 list. And the 2000s are starting to really make themselves known for a couple of wet decades. We'll see if that continues in 2026. So a spatial map of the rainfall from the Mesonet for last year. We had 7 Mesonet stations record over 65 inches for the year. No station topped 70, but Hart County came close with 69.44 inches. And then Greene County was 68 3/4 inches. Harlan County was 67 3/4 inches. So the top three there are all above 67 inches for the year. And again, our average is around 50. So that just shows how much above normal they were. But these 7 counties were kind of scattered across the state. So, a lot of it in central Kentucky, but you've got Marshall County up to the west and yeah, Bath, Boyle, Franklin. So scattered around the state pretty well. So pretty wet across the state um, for last year. Now turning to the storms, well, we'll start with December. This was a nice picture from December 8th. A little misleading there. There's no storms on that day, but probably some uh, snowstorms leaving the area. But nice picture there. Um, but we did see some severe weather. Yeah, once it warmed up, we had severe weather on December 18th, and then the 28th through 29th saw some wind across the state. We did have one tornado in December in LaRue County. It was an EF0 with a 20-yard path, about 2 miles long. No fatalities or anything, but a lot of the little purple numbers you see here are snow depths across the state. Most areas between Louisville to Lexington to and areas to the east. So, typically most areas receive around 2 inches, but you do see some 2 to 4, close to 5 inches in some areas between Cincinnati, Louisville, and Lexington area there. But for the most part, and then some, we did have some wind damage across the state with that pretty strong cold front that came through both on December 18th and then again on the 28th through the 29th. Now, how did we end up for the year? It was, as you know, a pretty active year for emergency managers. We ended up, when you combine the severe thunderstorms and tornado warning count, and this is for the entire state, we ended up third overall, just beating out 2006. We had, I want to say, yeah, 985 warnings. Um, not quite 1,000, but um, pretty high. When you look at the warnings going back to 1986. So hopefully, again, 2026 will be a lot lower on the scale going forward. Of course, a lot of that came pretty early on in uh, in the year, especially in first part of April and then again in May. If we look at just tornadoes, we were third, pretty clear third, just behind 2012. Not really company you want to be in. And then if you just pull out severe thunderstorms, we were fourth, just behind 2006. And just kind of recapping last year, some of the more notable statewide events. I had forgotten about this, but back in January 5th through the 6th, there was a pretty messy winter storm that came across the state. Pretty large area received up to a half inch of ice. Pretty bad freezing rain event, especially areas to the west. Louisville saw over 10.5 inches of snow. This actually gave them the third snowiest calendar day ever for the city, which is saying a lot. They had 9 inches fall on January 5th. And then Covington picked up just over 10.5 inches of snow. Lexington received over 6 inches, close to seven. So um, I don't know where I was. I don't remember that, but I think it missed Bowling Green for the most part. But a pretty messy event for the state, pretty inconvenient. And February 15th, 16th, this I think impacted just about everybody. Almost the entire state saw 2 to 6 inches of rain. The Weather Service issued 30 flood warnings, 47 flash flood warnings, 11 severe thunderstorm warnings, and 2 tornado warnings during the event. It seems like we talk more about the April event, but actually it was the February event that had 24 fatalities, 1,000 water rescues. Just and again, much of that fell over just a 48-hour period, with some areas receiving over 6 inches of rain. So um, not as much river flooding with this, but just tremendous flash flooding across a lot of areas. You see the picture there from near Dawson Springs along I-69 or Oxlide there, but just a tremendous event. I know there was a lot of flooding here locally and Bowling Green, and that was not uncommon. And then the April flooding. This is a picture of the Buffalo Trace Distillery from April 20th. Um, Tremendous. This was a really a 5-day event. A lot of the state got received over 10 inches of rainfall. Flooding caused 7 fatalities, major infrastructure damage, over 500 road closures, including several major interstates. There were also 6 tornadoes that touched down, including an EF3 that touched down in Jeffersontown, J-Town near Louisville on April 2nd. But that event, those 5 days started off with again, some severe weather with the tornadoes, and then the rain continued for up to 5 days. This picture is from April 20th, but that river flooding went on for, well, April. Um, but that the river flooding continued for some days after that. And then May 16th, severe weather outbreak. This was one of the really the worst tornado for the eastern region of our state going back to 1974. This was a long track EF4 tornado. It had a 60-mile long path through Pulaski, Laurel, and Russell counties late at night, which is I think a big reason for the high fatality numbers. Same as in the December tornadoes back in 2021. You have these nocturnal tornadoes, you can't see them coming. It's tougher to get the message out. And of course, a lot of the damage, the most significant damage here was on the south side of London. But Louisville also recorded a pretty severe wind that evening, 82-mile-per-hour wind gust. So it wasn't just the tornado, but it was The tornado that did the majority of the damage. But there were storms statewide. And then finally, we had a record dry August. It was the driest August on record going back to 1895 with an average rainfall of only 1.29 inches across the state, and many locations failed to receive even a quarter inch of rain for the month. So you see a couple of mesnet sites scattered around, one even recording zero, for the month. So pretty hit or miss the areas that did get it. And again, we had interesting. We had seven of the 12 months during 2025 recorded a top 10 uh, wet or dry record. You had again, August was the driest, but December was the 16th driest, and then you had February was the seventh wettest, April was the second wettest, May was the 11th wettest, and June was the 15th wettest. And then October was the 15th wettest. So quite the year for records and storms. Okay, well, looking ahead, we are reaping the benefits of a La Nina that is continues to be ongoing, however weak it may be. But I do think we're kind of reaping the benefits of that, and all that dryness you see across the South and even parts of the Midwest, I think can be attributed to that. Um, a lot of color on the map nationwide, but um, we do see some dryness creeping back in, which we'll talk about. But for the most part, compared to a lot of our neighbors, we're in pretty good shape still. And look at this. Look at California. When was the last time that you saw California drought-free? I think it's been quite a while. But the atmospheric rivers they've had recent really helped them in a big way. Now, looking at Kentucky, we are starting to dry out, particularly along the southern tier and western regions, and along the Ohio River Valley. Almost half, 47.9% of the states in some kind of dry or drought, and 4.66% are now in some kind of drought along the southern border there. Uh, right along the Tennessee border and then south central Kentucky. We'll see what that looks like next week after these rains that we're supposed to get over the next 48 hours. But hopefully that'll help, at least stave off further dryness for a while. And if you look at how we've changed over the last month, a month ago we didn't have any drought or dryness across the state, and so that's all new. Um, You look at the national map, and the West is definitely wetting up with those atmospheric rivers, but that does, you see quite a bit of drying across the Midwest and even a little improvement across some portions of the South, but Tennessee, some portions of Eastern Appalachia are dried quite a bit. Of course, Florida. Again, somewhat typical of a La Nina year. Now, nationally, soil moisture, it looks pretty good for us. And again, we are starting to dry out just a little bit across western portions, but for the most part, we're in pretty good shape uh, across the Ohio Valley. And but our stream flows are low and lower than average, even for this time of year. And that's some cause for concern as we go forward. The good news is that, of course, evaporation is low and our soil moisture is largely driven by evaporative demand. And you see, compared to where we were back in August and September, we're pretty wet right now. The soils are in pretty good shape, um, fairly wet at all levels, especially compared to, the growing season. So we're in pretty good shape with regards to soil moisture, which is one reason we're not seeing uh, more drought across the state because our soil moisture is still pretty good. Not a whole lot to talk about with agricultural impacts this time of year. Caught this image from the Mesonet. I think that's a goose that just happened to have his wings folded or something. It looks like he's suspended in midair, if that's what it is. But you see the rows there. It looks pretty dry and is typical this time of year. Not a whole lot to report. This was a USDA report from this morning, uh, talking about December hay supplies, 83% adequate, 6% surplus. Livestock conditions, fairly good, 74% good, 16% fair. Winter wheat, 70% good, 6% excellent. I'm not sure how that compares to previous years. Doesn't sound real good, but I know last year ag ended up pretty poor compared to the last couple of years. But we had a really wet spring followed by the heat, and that didn't bode well for a lot of our crops. Forage was pretty good, varied widely, as this says, and supplemental feeding will increase as the winter progresses, but current stocks are sufficient. So overall, this looks pretty good. I'll let Matt comment on this further uh, as we go. So looking ahead, we are forecast to have some rain across the state over the next few days. Hopefully we'll get hopefully this will pan out. We can use the rain. And it looks like areas of the Tennessee Valley will also see some improvement, hopefully in the drought monitor moving forward. So it does look like our driest areas, at least, except for right along the Ohio River Valley, we'll see pretty good amounts if this holds up. One thing I've noticed was between yesterday and today, the 6 to 10 day and the 8 to 14 day outlook have changed dramatically. Uh, but for the most part, for good for us. Next to 6 to 10 days, fairly warm, near normal precip, which is a nice change from what it was, what the forecast was yesterday. They had us under dry conditions. It looks like that will not pan out. And then looking out to 8 to 14 days, they are predicting some colder weather to move in. So we've been fairly warm the last few days, so we're probably overdue for some colder temperatures. And again, near normal precip for us, which is better than the forecast was yesterday, which was below normal. Now, if we look at the month outlook, now this was issued at December 31st, but they had equal chances for temperature for us, equal chances for precip. So not much signal. It is a weak La Nina, not a whole lot going on climate-wise. A lot of forcing right now. But again, it is a La Nina, and if you look at the 3 month, January through March, not much in the way of temperature, equal chances for us, but that nice little bullseye over Kentucky that we've seen in these seasonal outlooks now quite frequently, actually, and largely I think because of the La Nina that is kind of driving our weather patterns right now. Now, if we look out the long range, upper left is spring, upper right is summer, and then fall down here in the lower left, and then next winter. Overall, I mean, these temperature forecasts are largely persistent. We've had a warm decade, and they're predicting that to continue. Warm temperatures for us overall, and warm spring, summer, fall, and into next year. But then we look at precip. The precipitation for the spring is equal chances for us. Maybe just over north areas might be a little wetter, but they are predicting maybe above normal chances for a wetter summer and maybe a dry fall again. We'll see. It's right now they have it out in the plains, but it wouldn't surprise me if they crept eastward a little bit. And then surprisingly, they have us wet again next winter. I'm not quite sure because they have us also going into an El Nino, which that's more of a La Nina pattern. So I'm not sure what's driving those long-term precip, but that's pretty far out, and I'm sure will change. So here's the INSO outlook. They are forecasting the current La Nina to start begin to fade into more neutral conditions. It's a weak La Nina anyway, so it won't take much to for us to go into a more of a neutral pattern, and then long term they have us approaching maybe an El Nino pattern or maybe a weak El Nino going into next fall. And then again, the forecast, it just shows that dynamic models are showing us going into a weak El Nino. So we'll see, but that's still pretty far out. So again, the monthly drought outlook, again, it's pretty good for us. This was what was released on December 31st. They are predicting areas to our north and west to improve some, but again, with La Nina, areas to the south to remain dry going forward, at least for the next few months. Now, if we look at wildfire outlook, again, pretty good for us. They have us below normal for February, and then just average conditions, normal conditions for the remaining months. So not much for us to worry about here. Again, especially compared to the states around us, we're in pretty good shape. So in summary, last month was the 54th warmest, even though we were below average by nearly a half degree. And more importantly, we were the 16th driest. We were over 2 inches below normal for December. Last year, it turned out was the 6th wettest on record, with a state average over 60 inches, over 9.5 inches above normal, 119% of average. And across the state, that varied between 10 inches or 6.5 inches above in the east, over 10 inches across the remainder of the state. And some areas received over 65 inches rainfall. Last year was tied as the 25th warmest, largely due to those that warm spring and summer. Again, April was our second warmest, May our 11th. No, I take that back. March was our 15th warmest, April our 16th warmest, June our 14th warmest, and July our 6th warmest. So pretty warm months there, but then the fall was much more seasonable. Bad news, of course, the last month has been dry. Stream flow is starting to run low, and a few areas, especially along the southern border, are now in official drought. 47% of the state now at some level of dryness. But the good news is there is rain coming. The short-term outlook looks good, at least with average rainfall expected over the next couple of weeks. And with the weak La Nina pattern that we have above normal rainfall chances for the remainder of the spring. So with that, again, our next regularly scheduled webinar is scheduled for February 5th of the next month. And if you do have any questions or feedback, feel free to reach out to me, Matt Dixon at U of K, or Chip Zimmer with Division of Water. And we'd be happy to answer your questions. And thank you again for your participation. So with that, I'll go ahead and stop and take questions. Matt, Chip, anything to add?
I did hear that one agriculture impact, which is actually a positive one, is with it being a little drier, uh, the farmers have been able to get out into the fields this past week and actually do some field work in January, which is pretty rare. So while the soil moisture is still good, it's not sloppy muddy like it normally is. So that's been a little bit of a help for farmers to get out and do some work.
Yeah, just
Uh,
to piggyback on that, what Chip said, Ben Rudy over in Fulton County did send me a picture. I guess it was Tuesday of them doing some field work. And he mentioned in his comment, it's gotten to a point almost doing more field work in January than the beginning of April. Now, of course, last April was all that extreme flooding. Um, but we have been seeing some warmer winters as of late. I can't quite remember the specifics. You guys help me out, but is it 5 of the top 10 warmest winters have occurred in the past decade in Kentucky? I know I got the stats somewhere on my computer, but um, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where we are in February. We have had some issues, getting too warm too early in the season. That's impacted our peaches, impacted winter wheat at times over the past decade. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, those are great points. And you know, 1 or 2 days here and there aren't too much of a problem, but as we found out the last few years, boy, you have a warm February or warm March, and it can really cause a lot of issues.
Yep.
Matt, I didn't have any. I couldn't find. I know this the way the statistics are done have changed, or at least a lot of what NASS used to put out has changed. Uh, any news from like winter wheat, or I know uh, I haven't been able to find much to report on at this point.
Um, I haven't heard of too many issues at this point. As Chip said, I think the dry weather has been somewhat of a blessing in disguise compared to the past several years. We'll see what goes on in February again. Seems like it could go either way. We could, I guess there's always a chance we have extreme flooding again, considering past several years, but hopefully we don't go that route. I will say, I'll have to find the link. UK is working on developing a website that essentially, I don't want to say replaces what USDA NAS was putting out, but tries to pull all the statistics from the national dashboard and put it into a spot where Kentucky producers can easily access it. So yeah, I'd say be on the lookout for that, but hopefully that'll simplify putting together this webinar a little bit.
That would be helpful. That'd be helpful. Uh, any other comments? Putting in together the list of events from last year, I didn't forget about the heat and humidity during the summer, but it is one I should have added because if you think back to June and July, the humidity levels were high. And that was really one of the notable events of the year. It was just how hot last summer was.
I believe, didn't NWS Paducah put out some stats as breaking records as to how many days the heat index was equal to or greater than 90 degrees or something like that, or 100?
They did, yep, yep, yeah. Yeah, the August was average temperature, so
Yeah.
but if you just isolate June and July, boy, that was a hot 2 months.
I think
And particularly out west. Yeah.
I think it was number of days with the dew point above 70 and 75 degrees, if I remember
Gotcha,
correctly.
gotcha. It was hot, I'll tell you that. I'd be good with a cooler summer.
Yep, yep. Yeah. Any other thoughts, comments on last year? We uh we did have 50 fatalities total for the year among the three different disasters that we had. And in a typical year, we have maybe 5 to 10 in a bad year. And last year we had 50. So hopefully, it'll be another couple of decades before we see anything like that again, which we did. We went several decades before seeing anything like that. And here we've had a couple in the last few years. So, but was it just bad luck? I think it was, but hopefully it'll be a long time before we see that again. Any other thoughts, comments?
Hey, Jerry, it's
Thanks.
Shane, just chiming in. for the records department in December. All these were on the 28th. We had a record high temperature at the airport in Bowling Green of 76 degrees. That's tied for the second warmest temperature all time for Bowling Green in December. Also, Louisville hit 75 that same day, their second warmest all time for December. And Lexington hit a high at the Bluegrass Airport of 72, also on the 28th, which was a record.
That's saying a lot for the being near the end of the month.
Yes. Kind of a flip-flop month. We had very cold air the first 2 weeks, and then right at mid-month, it did a 180 on us.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It was really 2 months, weather-wise. And then we end up almost average, which is the way these things work. Great. Well, for those who join us regularly, if you do have any products that you'd like us to show or particular items you'd like to see discussed, just let us know and we'll incorporate those into the loop. But thanks again for joining us. And if there are no further questions, we'll go ahead and call it a day. And again, our next monthly webinar will be February 5th. So thank you all.